Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Thanks for joining the conversation. Welcome back to the Mimi and Greg Show, where Greg Rucka and I dive right in. As a matter of fact, I thought I'd leave our pre-roll chat in today since at 40 plus episodes, we pretty much are vamping anyway. If you are curious about the Portland weather or what Greg eats for snacks, this is the episode for you. Don't worry, we also discuss the difference between writing for television and film and why social media is so problematic. Plus, we review some of the TV shows we are watching: Ted Lasso, Only Murders in the Building, and Y the Last Man. I love catching up with my friend Greg Rucka and appreciate that everyone watching or listening is hanging in there with us. For those that don't already know, Greg Rucka is a New York Times best-selling author of hundreds of comics and nearly 24 novels. He is also the writer for his critically acclaimed film, The Old Guard, starring Charlize Theron. I'm loving these conversations and hope you are too. If you are, please rate my podcast on your platform of choice and share it with others. If you would like to support with a donation to help keep this podcast going, I would certainly appreciate it. You can become a patron of the show by visiting my website or patreon.com/sifumimichan. For comments or suggestions, email me at sifumimichan@gmail.com or reach out on social media at sifumimichan. Now on with the show.
How you doing?
Hi.
Hi.
Good. How are you?
A little tired.
Oh, it's already halfway through Sunday for you.
Yeah, well, a lot of stuff going on. How's it going there?
It's still Florida, so
Not gonna ever stop.
Florida-ish, but overall fine. I mean, we're just really we're fortunate in our small little space, in our world.
In your bubble.
In our bubble, yeah. We make our own rules, so so that helps. But all good. Is it cold? You got your sweatshirt on, and
I'm constantly cold, so I've lost enough weight now that I am perpetually cold. But we had the weather turn for the first time yesterday. The night before last. So the rains came back and came back with a vengeance. They'll stop tonight and then it'll warm up again this week. And then we will move into autumn proper. So,
okay. All right.
And then we'll probably get a couple days where it climbs into the low 80s again. But yeah, it's the season is turning. People have their pumpkins out,
Oh, right.
Like
right.
that. So. Nice. It's all good.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's the only way we can tell it's fall is when people start decorating because the weather is the same.
Right. Or, when the pumpkin spice lattes appear once more at Starbucks.
Exactly.
So,
the signs of the seasons.
Here in Portland, the first sign is the Oktoberfest brews. And autumn beers, craft beers, and pumpkin ciders and things like that start showing up.
Got it. Yeah. All right. Sounds good. All right.
Where we are, it's whatever it is. Well, come on. You want to use all this. That's good stuff.
I know. I think I have to use it as the intro.
Yeah. There you go.
That's the problem. It's this is us anyway.
Yeah. I mean, we just start anyway. It's like you come into the Zoom and it's like, you are being recorded. It's like, well, of course I am. So
you are always being recorded.
Good thing I'm wearing pants. So,
Oh my gosh, I love it. Well, I guess we could do a formal intro, but you're right. I may just roll right into this.
Yeah, I was going to say, who am I? Who are you?
It's so Mimi and Greg showish that we should just keep rolling with it, Yeah. So, but officially, hello,
officially. Who are you again?
Right. So, this is only our 40 something podcast.
Don't do that. I mean, do we get a cake at 50 or a silver watch? Or something?
I feel like we should constantly be getting cake. I mean, I don't really get cake because I don't do gluten and you don't do sugar. So
yeah. So
I mean, We'll have to.
We'd have to do a diabetic gluten-free cake.
I know, which does not sound good.
I'm sure there's one out there to be found that would be fine.
Yeah, I can actually make one. I feel like we could probably come up with something better that would just be lovely and not this like thing that's been taken and just like stripped of all the things that supposedly make it delicious.
That is one of the tragedies of dietary restrictions. Yes.
Isn't it though?
Yeah. It's like, oh, you took out all the yummy.
Right. And now I'm just left with broccoli, which I do love. But at the same time, you're like, oh,
you want some variety.
Yes.
Like, boy, are we already on a tangent. Like I eat a lot of nuts now, right? Because if you're diabetic, they're a good source of protein.
Mm-hmm.
And I can do pretty well with like almonds or whatnot for a really long stretch of time. But I will hit a wall where it's like, if I have another fucking almond, somebody's going to die.
You're
so
like
it's
throwing like, almonds at the wall.
I mean, it's like I have almonds and then all right, now we're mixing. Okay, we'll do some peanuts here and some pistachios. Because the biggest issue when you're diabetic isn't necessarily the sugars, it's the carbs.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But because it converts to anyway.
Right. So when you are snacking, almost every snack in this culture is a carb snack.
Mm-hmm. I know.
So you really have to train yourself to be like, I need fruit. I need a vegetable. Mm-hmm. I need protein. Mm-hmm. And most protein as snacks are not super convenient. Right. Like if you go to, I will have beef jerky.
Yes.
Or whatnot. You have to go sugarless. Right. And almost every jerky you will find, has been dunked in syrup and then they call it teriyaki. Right.
Exactly. This is why I have to make my own everything. I have to dehydrate my own jerky. I have to make my own everything. And it's a whole situation.
Yeah. So there you go. The lament of the dietary restriction there. Today on the Mimi and Greg show,
very, very fascinated
they shout at cloud
about our snacks.
Oh, I'm sure they are. I am certain that the upvotes on this conversation will be stratospheric indeed. Yes. So,
I feel like at this point, it's just kind of it's our theme. You said we went on a tangent. I'm like, what do you mean? This is the show.
Yeah. Like, what are we going to talk about? Who knows?
Right. Well, every time I've got this conversation coming up, it's like, okay, I want to prep for it. And I'll write out, okay, what happened this week? I'm like, this is depressing. Let me stop doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
That sucks. And I don't want to get anxiety right now. And then it's like, well, there's stuff that I know you've been up to and whatnot. But I'm like, really? Why do I do this? Because honestly,
why are we doing this?
We just end up talking about whatever we feel like it anyway, which is great.
Yeah, that's perfectly appropriate. I don't have a problem with that.
Well,
and I will tell you right now, I have spent much of the last week avoiding news. This was one of those weeks where it was like, I don't need to be aggressively informed this week. Like this week, I'm going to take off because it will filter to me anyway. Right.
You'll definitively get it, and then some in the coming week. So I feel like also we have kind of like, we've already kind of gotten our share. So we've got like stuff in stock. Like we're good.
Yes.
We're good for now.
We're okay.
We're okay. Okay. But it is funny.
World's still on fire. Moving on.
Yeah. And check.
Yes.
But it's funny because I was thinking about that as I kind of prepped for today, because it's Sunday, which is not a normal day for you and I to be chatting. And so I was like, let me see, do I have Greg notes? And, I just pull up the sequential ones and there's usually things. And then I go, oh my gosh, I just had this flashback because actually, I know you were just at Rose City, and that was where we had our formal sit down.
Yeah,
and
I was there for an hour and a half
this week. Yeah.
We're going to literally a drive by.
Yeah.
So
we're going to talk about it in a second because I want to hear about it. But that was the first time that I actually got to sit and interview you. And I'd met you at San Diego Comic-Con, and we had our origin show already. But I remember the cab ride to your house, or whatever it was, the lift or whatever I took. I was just like so nervous. And I was like, okay, there's all these things I want to get through. And it was just like so stressful. And it's so nice that now I'm still really excited to talk to you whenever it's our show. And then, but I'm not like a complete mess. It's very nice.
You're not. You have never been a complete mess.
Well, I hide it well.
I think you do yourself a disservice there. So.
But it's funny. I was talking to Oscar about this. I was like, yeah, I realize now I have a lot of repeat guests. I'm kind of not veering into meeting a ton of new people. And I have Spencer on Wednesday, Spencer Eckerman. And
oh, yes.
It's actually making
that exciting?
I'm nervous because I always get intimidated by journalists and writers, especially, right? Because I just feel like, oh man, I'm out of my depth, or I just feel, I feel intimidated. So yeah, that one's coming up Wednesday, and it's, been I'm trying to prep for it, and I don't know. We're probably just going to talk about Lazarus, so I should feel just.
I suspect I have to get back to Ackerman's book. I got distracted by some work reading I had to do, and having finished the work reading, I need to get back to Ackerman's book, and I need to read. Gonna get his name wrong. Mike Shackle, I believe, is his name. It's a fantasy novel called We Are the Dead.
Oh,
I believe.
Okay.
Let me double check.
So,
the Joy of the Internet. No, that's apparently David Bowie. Last word number 1. That's it. Okay, good. I got the title right. Now let's see if I got the name right. Yes, Mike Shackle. Thank God. Wow. Look, my memories, I don't trust it.
There's like 3 times today I walked into the room and I go, what was I going to get? And I walked back, and it was just this perpetual thing.
I hate those days. I hate those days where it's like, why am I standing here?
It was me all day.
What happened in the last 8 seconds that I forgot what I was doing?
Yes.
Yeah,
it makes me a little crazy. So, but, well, speaking of Eckerman's book, it's also one that you kind of need to just like be in the mood for, because it is also angering. Not a happy read. So it's excellent, but yeah, so I'm nervous about that, but I'm sure we'll just talk Lazarus and how amazing Greg Rucka is and Michael Lark.
Oh my God, stop, please. You guys need to have a pleasant conversation yourselves.
We will. But I mean, a big part of the connection is this his love for Lazarus too. So right, how can we not?
So, but you say that'll be your dessert in the conversation.
Okay. All right. I guess so. That'll be I really don't want to talk about Forever Wars the whole time either, though. And honestly, he has been 10 podcasts a day and just inundated. So who knows what he wants to talk about? You know me, I'll talk about whatever. So,
well, I mean, yeah, look, you gotta get out there and you have to shill for the book.
Yes, of course.
No, I mean, it is one of the reasons that I stepped away from novel writing is that it wasn't enough to write the novel. I mean, that's basically it.
Yeah,
the last novel I had published, officially, not a work for hire book, not like a Star Wars thing or whatnot, was Bravo. And the book was considered a failure by the publisher. And, they said that squarely on me. And it was, okay, well, maybe, right? But there's only so much shilling I can get out there and do. And when the publisher is in a knife fight with Amazon the month my book comes out.
Right. Yeah, I know you had a horrible experience.
Yeah, I mean, that was 70% of the first month sales were gone. So I have incredible admiration for those. I'm not even going to say artists, I mean, for those individuals who will go out there and engage in the self-promotion required. Mm-hmm. I do not find that easy.
Yeah. Basically, you just need to be stalked down by people like me, which are out there. They're just more intimidated to do it.
Look, we've talked about this, right?
Yes,
I mean,
of course.
It is, I am aware of the price I have paid for not using social media. I am aware the attendant price I paid in not using social media. Like Compass numbers would have been much better if I were on Twitter and Instagram and so on. And I feel badly about that. Right? I feel like I hurt this property by not going out there and jumping up and down and screaming. At a certain point, I know I'm going to have to re-engage, and it'll be around the old guard too, or whatnot. As things continue to develop. It is a luxury of my life right now that I don't have to be on Twitter, that I don't have to be on Instagram, that I don't have to be on Facebook. I hate I hate the transactional nature of what is developed there in regards to, I guess, the commercial creative community. I don't know how to encompass it, because when you're talking about something like Spencer Ackerman, right, you're talking about a journalistic work. So it's not appropriate to say that it is a fiction. And when we say creator makes it seem like you're creating a fiction,
right,
as opposed to the creator of the work, which is what Ackerman has done. The book doesn't exist unless they've written the book,
right?
They have created it. So, but for all the tongue-tiedness of that last particular interaction, I mean, it's a very strange place to be. And like I say, I recognize the privilege of my position, and it is a privileged position. It's also an incredibly, I mean, it says something that to not engage with social media is a privilege. You know what I mean? That's
I envy you.
Up. That's messed up.
And I envy you.
To say that it is my privilege not to have to go swimming in this septic sewer on a regular basis. There's something wrong if people are obligated to go swimming in that environment.
Yeah, no, this is definitely in our backlog, 100%. Like we've definitely talked about it a lot, but it is definitely something every day I go, oh, here I go. I got to promote the podcast. I got to do this thing. I got to put this story up. I'll give you a perfect example. And this isn't even directed at me, right? About 20 minutes before we got on this, I got a text from Bendis. And Bendis is all over social media. Yeah.
Right. Bendis is, I do not know what he has done that allows him to engage with it on terms that clearly work for him. But he sends me a link to a tweet from the One Perfect Shot account.
Okay.
Right. And it is a shot. It's a shot from the end of the Old Guard. It's the shot of Booker finding Quinn in his apartment. And so, I open it up on the web browser, and the only two comments are a poop emoji from one person and a thumbs down from somebody else. And it's like, that's, you know what I mean? It's like, seriously? The immediate response to somebody saying, look, I thought this was beautifully framed and lit,
right,
is is somebody responding with a poop emoji and a thumbs down. And it's like, okay, that's Twitter in a fucking nutshell right there.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
No,
it is the most innocuous thing in the world.
Yes.
For a verified, this account that simply does, here's this thing that we like the composition of, right? And here's the link. And the only responses to it are, you're stupid, I hate it.
I'm going on there right now and I'm going to go put a thing.
It's like, really?
Yes. No,
what the hell is the matter with you people?
So many things. So many things.
It's just like, Jesus Christ, folks, settle down.
Yeah. No, I did a post recently, which was just this long rant, about how frustrating it is, right? I'll try to put something out that's instructional, maybe to help people. I did a breathing thing for anxiety and I'll get, oh, wow, she looks like she's gained weight, or, oh, wow, like she doesn't even practice, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, all these things that people don't even know me. and it's just not even to do with what I'm talking about, or like just some sort of criticism. And you're just like, oh man, people are so mean.
Yeah. And it's like, what is this about?
Yeah.
I don't, there is something sincerely wrong with having created this environment and facilitating a platform that encourages interaction like that, because that's what it does.
Mm-hmm. Oh, of course.
I mean, it's just, it's sickening. It's really sickening. It's like, you don't have to like everything. Nobody's telling you have to agree with everybody. But you're entitled to your opinion. You're not entitled to share it.
And also, just to be rude to be rude. I feel like half the time people just put a comment, and there's trolls and all that stuff too. But
these are people sitting on their toilets.
Yes.
Doing their business and going, well, I've got 3 minutes before I'm finished here. I'm bored. And it's like, well, that is not a good reason to interact. I mean, if you're that bored, play fucking solitaire.
Right.
You know what I mean? Read something. Actually read something.
I want to antagonize people. That's way more fun. It makes me feel better about my insecure self. That's
I don't but even know if that's the process.
It's a tough thing for the soul too. Like if you can't handle it, this is why so many people have a lot of mental health issues. They get caught up in it. And, even someone like me, I get a little taken back sometimes. I'm having such a bad day. I've got voice messages left at my work recently about how dare you support the trans community, and it was just this long message. It was just, because I had an interview a few months ago with some wonderful women, and and you get these things and you go, okay, you know how to handle it and take it, but it's not that it's still not hurtful or upsetting.
No, and that's
exhaustive.
And that's precisely it, right? Because intellectually, you know what it is, and it's still an emotional attack.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it does harm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I said, I kind of was away from news this week, but, I saw what was the article saying, Facebook is actually evil. More and more people have come to the conclusion that Facebook is evil. It's like, you don't, dumbasses.
Yeah.
Like, no kidding.
But I really like what you just kind of pointed out. It's very, even though it's obvious when you say it, it really kind of struck a chord. It's just that intellectually we know one thing, but emotionally it doesn't mean that it matches up, and it doesn't mean it won't affect us. And that's
what social media does, true. Right? Yeah. I mean, social media is entirely, and this is known, it's documented. The power of social media is it bypasses your higher brain functions and it goes straight to your emotions. This is why getting people angry and upset is the goal of all social media platforms. right? The angrier you are, a flame war is good for business. Yep. Anger is good for business.
Yeah, it's true.
Anger is best. Fear will take fear if we can't get anger. There's no money in being nice to people. I mean, really,
I know, it's so horrible.
If Twitter was like, no, there's a code of conduct and we will monitor it, or if Facebook actually did do what they say they do, but there's no money in it.
Yeah,
there's no money in it for them, or more to the point, there's not enough money in it.
Right,
where enough is a grotesque amount of money. I don't know what the reckoning is going to be. It's going to have to be reckoned.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll watch that happen in the next whenever.
Yeah, I mean, it may be, it may be the collapse of all civilization.
Right. Well, I don't know if I want to watch that, but I do. Well, unfortunately, I do feel like I will be seeing beachfront property at my front door anytime soon.
I was going to say, unfortunately, I think we're going to have front row seats for a lot of these things, whether we want it or not.
I know it is true. It is true. But tell me about Rose City. How was it? How was it being?
Well, like I said, I mean, I was there for all of, I think, 2 hours. I walked over from the house because it's only about a 2-mile walk from the house to the convention center. I was immediately carded on entry. They wanted to see proof of vaccination. I was given a band to wear that indicated that I was in fact vaccinated.
Okay.
Everybody I saw was masked. It was very clearly they were taking it very, very serious.
Okay, good.
I went into sort of the exhibitors floor because I was actually looking for a couple people, and I found them. Matthew Clark was tabling, and I wanted to check on Matthew. And the guy who does my tattoo work was doing tattoos.
Okay, cool.
And I wanted to check in with him because he had done some work like a week and a half prior, and wanted to follow up on it. And I was surprised how many people were there. It wasn't overly crowded, but it was definitely attended.
Okay, great.
And I mean, when you're on a convention floor, there is not a lot of room. And there wasn't a lot of room, but I was pleased with the social dynamic I was seeing. Like, people were deferring to one another, and there did not seem to be, like I say, I was not there for long, but there did not seem to be a particular undercurrent of hostility.
Okay.
I did a panel with I'm so bad with names, Mimi. Hang on. Chelsea Kane and Chelsea's collaborator, whose name I have forgotten. I want to say Tony Fleeks on Stray Dogs. Dave Walker. David Walker. Let me see. Hang on.
I know. I had just looked it up right before, and I should have written it down.
Yeah, hang on.
David F. Walker, Chelsea Kane, Leah Maternik, and Tony.
Yeah, it was Leah. And then I believe it was Marla who did the panel. There were maybe about, 25, 30 people in the room. It went for about an hour. It was pleasant enough.
I love the title, which is Storytelling and World Building in Best-Selling Comics.
Yes.
Featuring Greg Rucka and etc.
But it was, like those things are, and, when you're on a panel with, people like David and Chelsea and Tony and so on, the conversation is going to go easily. Everybody's got insight and pertinent things to say. And Chelsea is a very deft show woman. She is always entertaining.
Okay.
And clear, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that was always fun. And it was quite pleasant. We had a good time. And then panel ended, and I had about 10 or 12 people with books asking me to sign them, and I signed a bunch of comics for folks, and then I left. Because it was really a question of me wanting to keep my exposure limited, mostly because of stuff that's been going on around the house. It gave me a fair amount of encouragement, that if shows are going to be run in this fashion and for the conceivable future, then I have some faith that there will be shows.
Okay.
That said, I am still not terribly enthusiastic about doing shows, but I wasn't terribly enthusiastic about doing shows prior to the pandemic. You weren't
all like, oh no, I can't go to all these shows this year.
Look, I mean, it's
because
funny.
You've done your time too, though, right?
That's
it's
exactly
not like you just started and you're like, oh, my first comics come out and now it's COVID. Great. Like that's, yeah.
And I also feel, and this is, I mean, I'm aware this sounds a little, or maybe a lot, self-indulgent or even, back patty. But Michael and I were supposed to do the Lakes Festival in the UK.
Yeah, I remember.
And we've both had to cancel on it. And as a result, we've both done these fairly long podcast interviews.
Okay.
And I was talking to Michael, I think it was Friday. He had called to discuss some stuff in issue 7. And was talking about the interview he did with the same guy that I had done the interview with.
Yeah.
And in the course of that conversation was talking about representation and the importance of representation. And Michael and I had not compared notes, right? Yeah. At all. It wasn't like, I'm going to talk to him and what did you say? And I had done mine like 2-3 weeks prior. And again, the issue of representation had been very prominent in that conversation. So Here's Michael, right? He's another white guy in his 50s living in Texas. We're talking about the same thing, or we are touching on the same things. And the realization, one of the things that, and I don't think this is an excuse, and I fear it sounds like it. It is, but what it is it is rather a contributing factor to the decision to pull back from doing shows. Guys, I have done a lot of shows. I have written a lot of comics. There are enough white guys out there. Let's make room. Right? There are other people who need the stage. It is time to gracefully move off to the side. And it's okay if every so often you come back, if you're invited. But like I say, I'm in a privileged enough position that I don't have to do every show to push my book. I don't have to get out there and beat the drum. And yeah, maybe I'm risking becoming obsolete or ignored or swept away because I'm not present still. And I know that for people like, say, Kelly Sue or Brian, their social media presence is about maintaining their presence. Gail Simone's a great example of that.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right. I mean, she exists on social media almost more than she exists in publication, if that makes sense. And that's not maligning her work. It is to say the focus of her work is preserving that presence to drive publishing. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier, which is I'm not great at shilling for myself.
Well, yes, but it's also you have such a like an experience from social, and we have like you have your principles about it too. And, you know, something Matt Fraction has talked about and you've talked about, we've talked about it together. And I mean, there's a reason, right? But if anybody ever wants to hear from you, I mean, they know
how to, like you can always send questions to Mimi, and you can always send questions to the Discord.
That's right. They can come here. The Discord is there. You're very active on the Discord and gracious with your time, and everybody feels so accessible to you. And so, there's lots of ways to hear from Greg Rucka.
I'm not impossible to find. You know, it's
well, you walked to and back from the convention. See, I'm so paranoid. I'd be like, oh gosh, what if people are following me home? And I get a little crazy.
Nobody. Here's the thing, you know, and I've had this discussion with with many people. Comics famous is not famous, and should not be mistaken for famous. All right. When I am, you know, consistently recognized buying coffee at a Starbucks, then we're talking about something else. But when it takes my name before there's a chance of somebody going, there's a guy who works at a convenience store near my house and has worked there for the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. And we have idle conversations when I'm in there, right?
Right.
And Gina got sweat jackets, which you've seen me wear. It's for Tog Post, right? And it's got the Labris embroidered on the back, and it says Tog Post, and it's, you know, got the old guard on his sleeve. And I've been in there wearing it, right? And this guy, and he has seen my name, right? You know, when I've given him like, we got to run the card or whatnot.
Right.
And at some point about a year ago, the old guard came up. Like, he was like, yeah, I saw this movie. Oh my God, the dialogue's just horrible. And it is so bad. No. And I'm standing there and I'm like, you know, it's like I'm wearing the fucking thing. And my name, you know, totally oblivious, right?
Oh my God.
Totally oblivious. And it's like, okay, you know, why'd you think that? Oh, interesting. Yeah, I didn't think it was that bad, you know, because you don't say, yeah, you know, I wrote it.
Right.
You know, you don't say that.
I think that would be interesting if you did, because that is the type of thing that would happen to me for some reason.
Right,
I just put it in the mouth like, oh.
Right. But I mean, the flip side of that is if I say, yeah, you know, I wrote it, there's almost no way to do that is not going to be adversarial, right? Because it's, unless this guy's an absolute sociopath, and I have no reason to think he is, right? I think he's wrong about
100% wrong about.
Well, I think he's wrong about the old guard and some of the other movies we've spoken about.
Yes,
I have questions about his taste,
right? So, yeah,
but it's what he likes, and that's
right.
Fine.
That's fine.
There's no way to say, yeah, you know, I wrote it, that does not make him feel bad. In some way.
You're kind.
That doesn't make him go defensive. And it's far easier for me to go, okay. I've been creating work for consumption by a quote public, an audience for almost a quarter of a century now. Mm-hmm. And I've said before, and it's a variation on a Stephen King line that I think may be apocryphal, But if I remember correctly, King once said that he found it interesting that the Great American Novel was a book that everybody owned but nobody had read, right? And he was sort of defending popular fiction.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And one of the first things you learn, and you have to learn this, is you are never going to write something that everybody likes. You're never going to create something that everybody likes. And it is a mistake, and in particular, a mistake in the age of the internet, to come out swinging at critics. Right? And I know creators who have done this, who have been like, oh, you gave my book a 9 out of 10. Well, you're wrong, and this is why it's a 10 out of 10. And it's like, that's not for me to say. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right? My job is to put the best work I can create forward and hope that it finds an audience, right? And if people don't like it, I'm sorry. I hoped they would. I will defend myself against charges or criticisms that I feel are that accuse me of an agenda that is not there. Mm-hmm. Like somebody, and I've read these, that the Batwoman run is homophobic, for instance. And it's like, yeah, you've got to bend over pretty far to come up with an argument that interprets that text as being exploitative, sexist, or homophobic. You really have to work at it. Mm-hmm. Now, clearly, people can and do, right? But those are things that I will feel justified in saying, I don't think that's there in the text.
Yeah.
Right. Like you may be able to find it, but I think you've got to do a lot of digging to support your argument there. And I think the amount of digging you have to do to support the argument kind of proves the fact that it's not. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The flip side of that is I try to own, if I have misstepped or misspoken through a work, I want to own it. Mm-hmm. But, I've seen critics come after people unjustly and horribly and never apologize for it when they've been called on it. I am thinking of one in particular who went after a writer I know and literally in a review said, fuck you to the writer. And I was like, this isn't the writer's fault. And when called on it, apologized to everybody but the writer. And it's like, no, you got, it goes back to responsibility.
Right. I was going to say this is a responsibility on both there, as a critic too. You are also talking about fellow humans, right? There's a way to say you dislike something or you disagree with a point of view or you disagree with a work. And again, everybody has different likes and dislikes. So that's
and we all love reading the scathing, hilarious review of something that is just horrible, right?
Right. Yeah.
And we are all willing to excuse it at a certain point, I guess. We hit a level where we're like, yeah, go ahead, take that swing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we're talking about people. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And oftentimes something that took a lot of work, regardless of because I had the same experience from an indie film standpoint. I used to be very judgy and critical. And then I made a film and then I went to film festivals and I saw a lot of films that, in my opinion, weren't great films, but I still was like, they deserve an applause. They deserve praise because they got something done. And whether maybe that was their first thing out or they didn't have any support. Like, I don't know all the factors, but also I realized this took a lot because I know what it took for my film. And so even if a book's not quote unquote great, it takes something, right? I mean, so you can't dismiss everything about it, right? And you know, maybe it is for somebody. So, but yeah, I have a more empathy now.
Some stuff out there is absolutely pap, and it's just assembly line without investment, without sincerity, without heart. But you know, again, it's the validity the validity of the opinion, it's yours. And if I solicit it, great. Nothing obligates you to shout it out
and put poop emojis.
Well, yeah, but that's exactly it. It's like, what the hell is that for? Why are you responding? That's not a conversation, right? And that's, I suppose, the thing that social media has sort of misled people into believing, is that, oh, look, it's a platform for having these conversations. No, that's not.
Right.
It's not. It absolutely isn't. They don't. The vast majority of people are not interested in conversing.
That requires listening on one end, and that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen.
It's a drive-by to throw some poop.
Yeah. When you're talking about critics, all I could think about is that movie Chef. Have you seen that? With Favreau, John Favreau, and it's a delightful movie. But there's this great scene. It's basically he's a chef, and then a food critic criticizes his stuff, and he like loses his shit in the restaurant. But it is a fabulous scene, and it's the beginning, so it's not a spoiler or anything. But Chef's it's a very lighthearted movie. I enjoyed it anyway. So, but it's a good one. And because of that, he does all those chef shows now with Roy Choi and stuff, like the actual chef shows. But that's because of the movie Chef. Like they worked together, and he wrote that film and stuff. But the critic scene is phenomenal, because basically they just literally go head to head, and it's in public, and it's crazy, but it's a good one. It's a light film. I really enjoyed it. So I don't know.
Cool.
Check it out. You should check it out. Speaking of lighthearted,
yes.
Well, we're talking quite a lot about Ted Lasso in the Discord, and this second season is so different than season one. Still very good.
But it's an extension of the arguments from season one, right? You know, I mean, the realizations and sort of the revelations of the deep unhappiness driving so many of these people, and how they cope with it or fail to cope with it. You know, it's very interesting. This last week's episode, you know, the beard episode, which is one of the two episodes that Apple basically came to them and said, do two more. Because they had broken, I guess, the 10 for the season. And then Apple said, 12, we want 12. And they were like, okay, we'll do a Christmas episode and look at the other ideas we had. I was reading an interview with Brendan Hunt about this.
Yeah, I learned about that through the Discord, because I was like, this is a weird episode. It feels like a filler.
Well, I mean, and you see the way Yeah, well, and you see the way they shot it. And there's also something I find very interesting this season, just sort of from a textual and metatextual level, which is so much of the season is referential.
Yes.
Right. So much of this season has been overt references to other texts. You know, the English major in me comes out. You know, they are referencing other movies, other scenes, other interactions over and over and over and over again. And this beard episode is After Hours. You know, I mean, it's the movie After Hours. And I really liked it, but this one was another hard one. And you come out of it, and it is unclear to me what, if anything, Beard has resolved. Mm-hmm. Right? But he is there the next day and is still wearing his fabulous pants.
Yes.
So, and I don't know if you saw what their little teaser was for next week's on Apple TV, but it looks like, so it looks like the next 3 are going to be something of a ride. And I will be very interested to know where they're going to be at the end of the season.
Mm-hmm. I know it's going so quickly. It's kind of sad. It's going so quickly.
I will say on another front, if you haven't seen Only Murders in the Building.
Oh, I'm watching it.
I love it.
Me too. I'm so glad you love it. Oh my gosh. Because I was like, I hope Greg Rucka loves this.
Yeah, no, I adore it. I am a lifelong Steve Martin fan. Mm-hmm. I have a dream one day. I wrote a spec screenplay like back in 2007. Imagining that that Martin would play the lead in it.
Really? So oh my gosh! I think we can make that happen.
Yeah, I don't.
I love Martin Short. I just
so do I. Oh. And seeing Selena Gomez get this, and just the aesthetic, the feel,
right?
The smart of it, the referencing with. In it, and it's funny, I was talking to a couple of friends last night who are big true crime podcast fans, and they're calling out all these other things.
Okay.
I am not.
Right.
I am not a true crime person, but apparently if you are a true crime podcaster, oh my God, it's like wall-to-wall references.
Yeah.
I like the vague homage to PBS Mystery with the Edward Gorey in just the art design. I like that it is sort of a cozy in terms of sort of the mystery styling. The only thing I don't like about it is I have to wait till Tuesday for the next episode.
Oh my gosh! But they got picked up, I think, already for season 2. I hear, right?
So I'm going.
So we're like,
is it going to be another murder in the building, or will it be only murders on the airplane?
Yeah, I know.
In the park, only
oh my gosh! But it's so much fun, and that's another one that was like kind of a nice breath of fresh air, right? Yeah. And it was just, and I was hoping you would really like it too, because it's got like the crime part of it, but that's like kind of secondary to like just the relationship building and like their banter, and just seeing those two together is always awesome for me. I mean,
it's an absolute treat.
Yeah,
it's an absolute treat, and
I think so too.
I am digging it very, very much.
Yeah, so, it's a lot of fun. Oh my gosh, I'm glad you brought that up. that's been very joyous on our viewing schedule.
Well, and then I'll give you one more then, because clearly we're all this is now turning. You know what? You should go to Apple and ask for more money. Because I was going to say we're spending a lot of time talking about things on Apple TV.
I know we do give Apple a lot of love,
but they put there's a filmed version of the musical Come From Away that was released on September 10th.
Okay.
And it is a lean, mean, beautiful little musical. I love it. I've seen it on Broadway twice.
Oh, okay.
And I think it is terrific and moving, and one of those pieces of art that is actually good for the soul. It's a bit of a ride, but I highly recommend it.
Okay, I'm definitely going to write that down and watch it.
Yeah,
and I love musicals.
The production is, it's a great production, and it's pretty much the original Broadway cast. I think one or two of the parts I think are not the originals, but
wow, I didn't see that. So
yeah, but it is, I think, well worth your time, and I would urge people if you have the opportunity to see it.
Nice. So. I'm getting like all the sun in my face.
Yeah, I noticed.
I'm like, well, it was raining like crazy a second ago, and now being Florida, it's just stopped, and it's like the sun's shining through.
Now you're glowing.
I know. Yeah. I know we got to wrap up soon, but bless you. I know we got to wrap, but I was going to ask you because I realize now when I'm watching, a comic book film or TV show or something, it's like I see it very differently. And when I'm reading comics, I used to think, oh, this would be such a great TV show. And now I kind of veer away from that, because I remember we've had so many conversations about how the mediums are so different. You write them so differently. And I used to be very, well, this didn't happen in this book. Why would the movie be so different? And I have a completely different take on that now, thanks to our conversations. But I was curious about the difference between writing for movie and TV, if that's very different, because I know you've done both, even though we haven't gotten to see any of that TV necessarily yet. But I know you've done it. Like, is there a huge variance? Like, if you're doing a comic to TV or movie adaptation, is that very, very different?
Interesting question. It more than anything comes down to the amount of time you have to tell the story, I think. Okay. And those decisions come down to decisions of structure and pacing as a result. Issues of my style in writing the two are not terribly different. Like my voice, my screenplay voice and my teleplay voice are similar.
Okay.
I tend to be like, and I think we've discussed this, in a comic script, it's very epistolary. I am talking to Michael. I am talking to Nicola. I'm talking to Leo, right? I am saying to them, this is what we're doing. And here's a little in-joke. And here's me being a little snarky. And so when I'm write a screenplay or a teleplay, not necessarily knowing who I am writing to, right? The primary goal is this is the necessary information to carry the story forward, trying to be presented to you in a way that is pleasant enough to read. I don't want to be shouted at. And there are plenty of screenplays or teleplays that shout. They will underline and boldface and go, and then it blows up.
Right.
And I get
DC films.
Well, I mean, it's a style, right? The style is to say, and this is a big thing. Right. This is a huge moment, right? And I get it. And Hollywood, for as much as I have come to grudgingly accept that there are a lot of actually very, very smart people in that industry, as in most things, the most precious commodity is time, and a lot of them don't have time to read. So a screenplay or a teleplay that requires a close reading is sort of at odds with the screenplay or the teleplay that can very quickly and efficiently deliver, right? Like you get everything that's going on. And, because I come out of a prose background first and foremost, my goal is always to engage the reader. Right. And if I do that well, then everything else should be conveyed. I shouldn't need to scream at the reader to say, and then it blows up. Right. If I've done it well, when I say, and then it blows up, that should be a moment where they go, oh, damn, But yeah, I mean, the root of the question is so many of the decisions are made on the basis of what you have the time and space to deliver upon. One of the neat things about serial television is you actually have a lot of time.
Yeah.
You can build things out. You can
pace it out and plan it as long as you don't get cut in the middle of your season.
Right. But I mean, you look at, going back to the Ted Lasso of it all, right? When this season is done, it'll be interesting to rewatch the whole season in sequence and see what they built and how they built it and why they built it. right? Because so much about this season is about the necessity of self-care.
Yeah.
And those failures when we haven't. Nate's story is a story of misery, right? When Nate psychs himself up, he spits on himself in a mirror. That's an act of hatred and contempt. That's not self-love. That's not self-care.
Yeah.
That's him hating himself. And either he hates who he is, or he hates who he has been, but it's not healthy.
Right.
And Nate's behavior, and certainly the back half of the season, is not healthy. It is driven by deep, painful insecurity. Versus a sort of paradoxical security that is coming out of Roy and Keeley. Right. Which is, which has not meant they have not had difficulties, but instead has meant that they are able to look at themselves and speak to them. So, yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. And it, like I say, it always comes down to time.
Yeah.
How much space do you have?
Yeah. Because of course I just started watching Why the Last Man, and very excited for that. I mean, that comic for me was like one of the first I've ever read twice. And it was just like something that really was something that kind of got me into reading a lot more comics, especially not just, here's a Wonder Woman story or a Batman or like a superhero. It was just something completely different. And so it's interesting to see it playing out on screen for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking, I haven't gotten to watch it yet, and I'm looking forward to it. And I'm really excited for Brian.
Yes.
Or I should say Mr. Vaughn.
Yes.
Who
I've been harassing to no end, by the way, for the last 2 years.
This has been a long time coming.
Yeah.
For him. This has been a really long journey. So sight unseen, I'm overjoyed for him.
Well, the casting is fantastic so far. Yeah. Like I've, without giving things away, you're seeing these characters come off the page, and you're not, aside from Diane Lane, there's no one there that you're like, oh, that's Diane Lane playing so-and-so. You're just like, that's 355. That's Yorick. That's, so which is nice, because you sometimes having the big name stars is distracting to the character. Sometimes it's amazing, but in this case, it's really, I really am happy with the casting so far. So, but it's interesting because you see it deviate or this or that. And I always come back to our conversations. Well, I'm like, of course it can't be exactly the same, and it shouldn't be, because it's written for a page and it's written for TV, or it's the mediums.
Are you adapting it, or are you trying to translate it?
Right.
And translation is a much different animal. It's a very different creature.
Yeah.
And much harder to do, because they say if you were to translate, the first 4 issues of Lazarus, maybe that's 40 minutes of television. Maybe that's 4 issues, and that's 1 episode. So you need to be able to go, okay, where are the places we couldn't go? What more is there to see? What are better ways to build this world?
And sometimes even new characters are introduced, because people are like, that wasn't in the comic. But it adds, like you said, it adds to the story, but also you have to build it out, because it would be over very quickly, or you move through it quickly, and
you'd run out of material.
Well, I just can't wait when we are brainstorming that Lazarus show and we are working on it together.
Look, your lips to God's ears, as my father would have said.
Yes. All right. Well, I know we got to wrap up. So as always, it's a pleasure, and
it's great talking.
We get to talk about fun things and serious things. But
this was a little more cheerful.
Yeah.
I mean, Or at least it ended a little more cheerful.
Yes, of course. That's probably what we should do. We should always end on that cheerful note because then we'll remember that. At the end of Kung Fu, we play fun time with the kids class. They play like a little game. It's like, that way they don't remember all the sweating and the hard work for 45 minutes. And the last 5-6 minutes are like, oh, it's fun.
Yeah. Oh, I want to do that
time. Exactly. All right. Well, thank you so much, Greg. It's always a pleasure.
My best to you and yours. Say hi to everybody. And
likewise.
We will talk soon.
Absolutely.
All right. Bye.
Bye. That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/SifuMimiChan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook.